This stuff's not working though. This not working. Yours also has the echo. Can you take the echo off of his also? Sorry, we have the wrong one. Is this the wrong one?
Aid, can you check the thing? Is good. That's good.
Start.
Inshallah, can get us started. I'll open with a Q&A for the session we had yesterday, other day.
MashaAllah. Your camera is very clear, MashaAllah. It's excellent.
15 plus. 16.
MashaAllah.
Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Talia, assalamu alaikum. Right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. اللهم لك الحمد حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه. Thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another opportunity to meet and study Kitab Al-Fiqh Al-Shafi'i. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed to continue our journey, lesson class 3. And alhamdulillah, we're progressing as expected, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilman ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma ameen. So inshallah, today we have the structure for every class is going to be, because fiqh has a lot of questions. So we'll open with 10 minutes questions, Q&A, 5 to 10 minutes, inshallah, if you have any questions from the previous class, and then we'll proceed with our lesson for today. And then after that, inshallah, we'll continue. At the end, inshallah, we'll make sure we also have another 5 to 10 minutes Q&A as well, inshallah. So don't feel sad if all of the questions are not answered in one class. This is like a build-up, so inshallah, we'll keep going. So from last week, any questions? From last week? I know so many people had like many questions, so please, this is the time to ask, and inshallah, we're ready for it. So just a recap of what we did last week. We talked about anwa' al-miyah, the types of water and that should be used for tahara, and we emphasized on the concept that the water that can be used for tahara, wudu and ghusl must be tahir, pure, and also must be what? Purifying. Because not every pure water can be purifying, mutahhir, so we emphasize on that, and we gave some examples. And we also highlighted the idea of if the water is najis or mutanajjis, impure, if it has been affected by some kind of impure substance, it is no longer eligible for to be used for tahara or wudu or ghusl. And we've given so many scenarios. That's when we had like so many questions. Bismillah.
If something like this, it has been adjusted and it spreads into like a wet dog, comes on carpet and the carpet dries up. Carpet still not just
Today we're doing muqallad.
We're doing what?
Muqallad today we're doing with the dog.
Yeah. So the question is about like the spread of najasa. Because now, today actually we're covering najasa. So I think many of the questions that you might have could be answered today, because today we're talking about what are the impure substances. Because last week we talked about the water that becomes impure. But what makes the water impure is that some impure substance has came in contact with this water. So to get the full picture, we need to learn about the impure substances, and then based on that we will be able to tell that this water is impure or not. So the question is about dogs. If the dog is, which is najis, as we learned today, the dog is impure, and that means that the water that comes out of the sweat of the dog is impure. The water that came in contact with the dog and is now dropped from the dog is also impure. If this water comes in contact with the carpet where you're praying, wherever that might be, you need to clean it. That's impure. The same thing applies to the hair of the dog, is impure. The same thing applies to anything that has to do with two things. Because we learned today about the dog and the pigs are considered to be najasa mughallada, like heavy impurities that must be cleansed, and anything that comes from pigs and dogs are always impure. Nothing can make them pure. Yes. Any questions about from last week? خلاص.
I guess my question was like if according to the Jasa, when the water dries, does that change the?
We'll learn today what if the water is dried. So I can tell that this is like, some water from the dog. Okay, what if the water is dried? The najasa still. It's called, we have two types of najasa. Najasa ayniya, something that you can see, visible. Najasa hukmiya, it's invisible, but it's still there. Similar when like urine, for example. If the urine is dried, if our clothes has been touched by urine and it is dried, you might not be able to see it. You might not be able to actually smell it. But it is still impure because the najasa is still there. Based on the judgment, hukmiya means based on our judgment, the najasa is still there. Shaykhna, bismillah, we'll start. Inshallah, today we'll do vessels. Any questions about that part? Inshallah, that's good for now. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا يا رب العالمين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا متقبلا لوجه الكريم يا رب العالمين. Well, alhamdulillah, this section that we're talking about today, so we talked about water last time, and so now the kind of logical step that the scholars then dealt with, which to a lesser degree we have to deal with now, are vessels that would contain water. And what is the ruling on vessels that we have to contain water, sorry. So I would say this in that, many times people will think, well, alhamdulillah, we have our faucets and we just turn on the spigot and the sink and the water comes out, that's great. And you're absolutely right. And for the majority of your life and for the majority of your ibadah, you'll probably come across that. The issue is what happens when that changes. Because far too often I have run into people that when the normative situation that they're in, i.e. I pray at home, I pray at work, I pray in a place, changes, now they're stuck. And they're stuck, and the default is, well, I'll just wait till I get home. That's not an option for us in terms of people who are committed to their deen. I will pray later is not an option because you don't know the fiqh ruling. So that's why this is incredibly important for us to have a full understanding of situations that really become then, say, anomalies, but they're only anomalies because of, I think, also where we live. As you are in other places or different situations, it may not be an anomaly. It may be the normative there, and you may find yourself in that situation. So anyway, that's why I think it's important, because maybe as we hear some of these rulings today on some of these things, they may seem like they are, not part of something that I would come in contact with, but I would say yet. Right? Yet. And it's better to be prepared and not need something than need something and not be prepared. That's kind of the approach that we take to that. So basically what we're talking about today are Awani, sorry, how did I end up on page 5? The vessels in which we contain, our water is contained in, and really rather than the fuqaha, what they did was rather than telling you all the things that you can deal with, they just simplified it and said, I'm going to talk to you about the two things that you can't use. And the two things that you can't use are gold and silver. So vessels that are made of gold, vessels that are made of silver. So here, unlawful to use gold and silver, whatever the use may be. So wudu, drinking, it even moves into cutlery, knives, forks, spoons, these types of things. We cannot use gold, we cannot use silver from that, unless, obviously now you have a rukhsa, you have a dispensation, unless there's absolutely nothing else that would allow you to make wudu or the like. And then we have our ruling for that. The Prophet ﷺ, we have a hadith here where the Prophet ﷺ said that I heard the Messenger of Allah saying that do not wear silk or brocade. This is talking about males here. Do not drink from gold and silver vessels or eat from such dishes. They are for them, meaning those that are not Muslim in this life and for believers in the Akhirah. And I also thought this was incredibly telling because now gold and silver has such a high standing in society, but yet the Prophet ﷺ is talking about this, in 1400 and, 450 years ago, plus minus, right? So I thought that was very telling that at that time, it was did not have the status that it did today, but yet it was still, the prohibition was there. And perhaps from the kind of Allah's knowledge of the human being being inclined towards that. So anyway, here an analogy. I just want to bring this up because we talk about this, how rulings are set. Remember we said how rulings are set? They're set from the Quran, they're set from the Sunnah, they're set from Qiyas, and they're set from Ijma'. So here you have, he says, if you have the book here on page 33, he says, an analogy is drawn from eating and drinking and applied to all other uses. And the impermissibility includes both men and women. So here, that's that use of qiyas, analogy, right? So ruling is taken from silverware and cutlery and these other things, based off of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is just telling us here not to use it. Ruling for vessels that have been, the next slide, I'm sorry. Here, just now, again, maybe if you're in this field, it's something, but now soldering is used here, but soldering really is a term that I will use here. So what's the ruling then? I want to have something which is soldered with gold or silver. Absolutely unlawful, impermissible to have anything soldered with gold, regardless of whether it is a large amount or a small amount. Yes. So soldered is like to join two things that have been separated. So like in
Liham, yeah.
Yeah. Afwan. Yeah, I forgot about, I can use Arabic. Alhamdulillah, yeah.
She's using non-standard Arabic anyway.
Yeah, right? Because I was like, butcher, what the? So anyway, yeah, so kind of soldering these two pieces together. It's absolutely unlawful to use anything soldered with gold, regardless of whether it is a small amount or a large amount. And then for silver, it takes a different ruling. If for silver it is small and not for decoration, right, then it is permissible. Now, decoration really is about something which is it has a functional purpose. So it's something that has a functional purpose and a functional necessity, right? It's simple and practical without necessary adornment. That's how he's distinguishing this idea of decoration. And the amount which is small doesn't draw attention to it. It's really about avoiding excess. So that's not about like, oh, it's such and such ounces, or it's such. That's not what they're talking about here in terms of weight. It's really about what one is distinguishing between function and embellishment. That's really what the distinction is there. If it is large, then there is something which is it can be done, but there's karaha in it. Okay, and then the Prophet ﷺ, how is this drawn? How do we get this ruling? The ruling is that Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet ﷺ, that he had a drinking bowl that he brought to the Prophet ﷺ many times, and he said, I've used this drinking bowl to give water to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, such and such, meaning such and such amount of time. So that's how the hukum comes from now, right? Remember we said Quran and Sunnah, he observed the Prophet. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell him this directly for this bowl, but rather he observes the Prophet ﷺ drinking from a bowl which has been soldered, having a small amount of silver in it. That's how the fuqaha, the scholars, derive the ruling from this. Okay, that's how they derive the ruling from it. So the last part here, very clearly here, again, small amount, not for decoration, permissible. Large for necessity, large and for necessity permissible with silver, large and decorative or small and decorative is disliked or haram depending on the case. Next slide. Here, just very straightforward, vessels from diamonds, pearls, coral, etc. Other ma'adin, what we call it, precious metals. Sorry, other precious metals here that are mentioned, they are permissible. So only the gold and the silver is something which is impermissible. Okay, and this is very important. This point here that the default of something is ibaha. There's permissibility in it unless there is a nas, a textual proof, or from those categories we said Quran, Sunnah, Qiyas, and Ijma'. Qiyas being analogy and Ijma' being the Ijma'. Consensus amongst the scholars. Consensus, scholarly consensus, okay? If you do not find one of those four, then the default of that thing is permissibility. Okay, the default is permissibility. And the last thing I'll just say here, ruling on the using of the disbelievers here. Very interesting here. Imam Shafi'i takes this permissible to use, recommended to wash first due to possible contamination. And he even talks about that in the hadith here. Wash and eat from them, the command to wash them. The ulama here that are talking about this book, and it's by way of recommendation due to the possibility of them being soiled because of the unbelievers, because of non-Muslims using them to have pork and possibly wine and drinking from them. But it's recommended, it's not obligatory, which is also an important point. And this is something important for us to mention, because sometimes we may find a level of staunch, Allahu Akbar, I can't think today, of like a iltizam, like a level of like a high, like a, what do I say, like a strict, thank you. a strict adherence to something, but yet one didn't take the ruling from it. Okay, one is only using just the logic behind it. Oh, we can't do that because someone cooked pork in it. Prophet says it's recommended here in this position, not obligatory. Now that's up to you to discern what that is, but what we say at the level of the ruling, that's what we're looking at, the level of the ruling. Okay, recommended to wash it when there is when one is known that is from someone who may have cooked that items in it which are impermissible, or drinking wine or so forth. So alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we'll leave that part here now and on to the next slide, inshallah.
Inshallah. So before we move to the next section, we inshallah will take questions. That section, I know you might have a lot of questions about the rulings, but let me just make sure we highlight a few things first. So we're talking about vessels. So we talked about last week about water. Water is wasila, with which we make what? Wasila means what? The means to make wudu. So we need to learn about the wasila. So we learn about the rulings of water because it is a wasila with which we make what? Wudu. Now we learn about vessels. What does vessels have to do with tahara? Because it is the wasila that he used for water, which we use to make what? Wudu. So in Islam, like when we learn about ahkam, we need to learn about the wasila, the means that leads to something. Sometimes the wasila takes the same ruling as the act itself, the act of worship itself. That is important. So Sheikh talked about like the soldering, talked about also another point here to highlight coating. If something is gold coated or silver coated. And I don't think, Sheikh, it is uncommon that people use gold and silver now and as utensils. I think in some cases we've seen people have like faucets in their homes that are gold coated or silver coated. So it's actually, if that is the case, that's what we're talking about. So vessels here is not necessarily like a container in which you put water. Vessels actually is referring to anything that contains something that you use in your house. So we're not talking about jewelry or watches or like rings, and that has a different ruling. Inshallah, I remember to highlight it before we finish that section. But we're talking about something, even mabkhara. I couldn't find the translation. What's mabkhara? The place where you put the scent that makes
The
senses of something.
Yeah.
That that mabkhara in which you put the bukhur, if it is gold or gold coated or gold silver, it is impermissible. It's permissible to use. Yes. So it doesn't have anything to do with water, but it is because the ruling here is that يحرم اتخاذ. It is acquisition of these vessels is impermissible. So for you to even trading in these vessels is impermissible. That is the rule, right? So even if you're someone who's into trading and you're buying vessels, made out of gold and silver, and you're trading them, that would be impermissible. Why? Because it is not permissible for anyone else. Gold is permissible for the sisters. So it is good that we have a business with gold because it is permissible for someone. So, silk is not allowed for the brothers, but it's good for the sisters. So it's okay to have business of that nature. But something that's completely impermissible, you cannot acquire things like that, remains impermissible in any case. So now talking about at-talaq, at what point do we say something that's quoted is impermissible if the amount is significant? That if you heat it and melt it to extract the gold, and the amount that will be extracted is significant enough, that in that case the coating will be impermissible. But if it is a small amount, insignificant amount, and I think if you have a pen that is gold coated, and if you try to get something gold out of it, I don't think you'll come out with anything. They have it like very, very significant amount of gold, so it doesn't really have much. Same thing if a brother wears like a watch that has maybe gold coated, if the amount again is too insignificant, then it is fine, inshallah. So again, the amount has to be significant for us to say that the coating is impermissible. The same thing, decorating the house with anything that has to do with gold or silver is impermissible. So if you, mashallah, someone is wealthy enough to do that in the wall, and decorating doesn't have to be like that you paint a wall with gold or you have like something major. It could be like just putting pieces there and here. It would be also impermissible. Again, the hikmah, the wisdom of gold and silver, I don't think we can. This is, again, fiqh will focus more in the hikmah, focus more in the rulings, not in the hikmah, the wisdom. But for gold and silver, again, there is khuyala, riya, showing off. What about, the Sheikh just said that the rule doesn't apply to the like more precious metal, metals and other things that could be more expensive. Well, what people are familiar with the most, gold and silver. And I don't think, it's okay if someone is driving, mashallah, someone is driving a Lamborghini versus someone is driving like a very old car. That Lamborghini he might be saved from showing off. Okay, alhamdulillah, I have enough and I'm buying it. We can say that he could maintain the good intention. But do you think someone is driving a car made out of gold and silver without having something in his heart of that khuyala? Allah A'lam, I think it's very rare. So the Islam here talks about sadd al-dhara'i, like wants to protect you from being in a position that you're actually like, riya is finding its way to our hearts. That's why al-dhahab wal-fidda, the hadith is very straight. لهم في الدنيا ولنا في الآخرة. It is not allowed for us. It is impermissible for us, whether using them for eating, drinking, or using them for water to have water for wudu as well. All of that will be impermissible. Just wanted to clarify those few things. Inshallah, a few questions, and then we'll move on. Yes.
Is this only for like vessels that you drink and eat from?
That's it, like acquiring them, having them in your house, just even for decoration, having something made out of gold and silver just somewhere in your countertop somewhere is impermissible.
Because I have like a little silver piggy bank. It's like, is that haram?
Based in what we just learned, that it is impermissible to acquire anything, use it for decoration, gold and silver, straightforward.
It's holding money in it.
Holding money?
It's holding like change. Yeah.
I mean, again, like, regardless, again, like the rule, do we limit it to something that we're using for water? No, the rule, ما يحرم استعماله حرم اتخاذه. If it is not allowed, it's impermissible. If the Prophet ﷺ says, do not eat in them, do not drink in them, the rule extends by analogy that you cannot acquire them, have them for decoration for anything. So it is better to avoid. I know it's something like silver is not really something that much, but I think better be safe from anything of that nature. So we'll take one question from the brothers. Yeah. Yes.
Sheikh, just to confirm, I heard you correctly. I think you mentioned that if, I mean, the faucet, for example, is like pure gold. So the water that comes out from that is not allowed for us to make wudu from. So if I, like, no, I don't have one. If I go to a guest house and I see a faucet that's made of pure gold.
Yes.
So is it allowed for, is it for a Muslim not allowed to make wudu from that because the water is?
Yes. So the question, again, I'll repeat the question for people online. So the question is, okay, I don't care, or I was visiting someone in their house and they only happen to have faucets made out of gold, and I made wudu. I felt so good about the wudu made from, from this one. So your wudu is valid, but you're sinful. And so at a certain point, the usage of something is impermissible, but it does not affect the validity of your ibadah. Same thing for salah. If you pray with a t-shirt that has a cross on it, your salah is valid. I'm not gonna say you covered the aura, you did everything, but having that reduce the rewards of your salah, and you're sinful for using something like that.
So it's like the logic of stealing water to make wudu.
Yes.
Sinful for doing it, but
Similar to stealing water for wudu. Your salah is good, but you're sinful for stealing water. Inshallah. Yes.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
The first question is, like, what about, like, it's not actually gold or silver, but it's a material or paint that imitates silver or gold. Like a lot of classes nowadays, might equal silver, but they're not actually really silver.
Yeah, if it's not actually the.
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry. Sorry, for those online, the question was, what about a faux simulated silver or gold ornamentation, but it's not gold and silver in itself? Then that's a different ruling then. They're talking about the actual metal itself, the metal of gold, the metal of silver. Yeah.
And then the second question, so we find soldering to be going into metals.
Correct.
So what about like melting gold or silver?
Melting gold or silver for what?
Or like if, let's say that someone owns gold jewelry and then they want to melt that jewelry to make a gold bar. Are they allowed to do that?
To make a gold bar?
Sounds like investment.
Yeah, I mean, so, I don't know, Sheikh and Hukam on that, I can't see there be impermissibility on that. You're talking about just taking a gold from the form that it's in, melting it, putting it into quote-unquote a different form.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that can also be mixed with other pieces of gold as well.
Correct, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not gonna give a fatwa on that, but it's
it's
permissibility.
yeah. Again, we talked about acquiring something for decoration, this and that. That's the impermissibility. That's where the impermissibility comes in. But if you're acquiring it for like some kind of like savings or anything of that nature, or someone is buying, I think this is a very realistic example, someone is buying like some gold utensils from somewhere and they are taking them, melting them to make gold for sisters, for example. That's allowed. As long as you're not using it, as decoration or that. Yeah. Right. Yes.
So, sorry.
Both your questions. Any other questions from, yes.
I have a simple question.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes they use gold to like decorate food these days, and it's super elaborate, but like they'll use like gold, like is that permissible? Not that I have a chef.
To decorate what?
Food.
Like, well, people have like it, yeah, like you can buy steak with like gold.
Astaghfirullah.
It's not gold.
It's really gold?
Is it tasty?
I don't know. I know it's very.
It's like so the question is nowadays, if you go to a premium steakhouse,
Yeah.
they'll take out a very paper thin, even thinner than paper, sheet of gold. So it's actual, like, I don't know what the metric, 16, 20, whatever carat gold, and they lay it on the steak. It's so thin that it dissolves, but it's actual gold.
And you eat it with the steak.
It's at all this digestible.
First of all, is the steak halal? Wow, that's great, wow.
I'll at least say it is disliked, at least disliked.
I haven't tried it, I just wanted to.
Bring it, we'll take the gold, put it in my pocket, go seal it, and then pay for the steak. Yeah, that's it, yes. I would, wallahu alam, the amount of gold is significant. It is insignificant that you can, maybe it's not a big value. I don't know like how many grams of gold will that be. It's insignificant, but if it is pure gold, like whether 16, 18, 21, whatever acres, I think it should, the rule stays the same. And please don't go to these restaurants.
But they do it with silver too. Like you can buy silver sheets and they put it on dessert, but like it's very. Normally these metals don't just dissolve like that, so there's something.
So it becomes like a sauce, just like sauce. Silver sauce.
Yeah, that's odd. I mean, the heat of a steak can dissolve. I mean, that seems. I mean, Wallahu a'lam. It seems odd.
Like it's very, very like, it's very.
Negligible the amount, right?
Yeah, like it's like $5.
Yeah.
It's standard on paper, it's not on the paper.
Yeah, I don't think it will be pure gold or silver. I don't know. It is. Yeah. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
pause on that.
Yeah,
and then, inshallah,
yeah, let's-
I look into this. We'll look into it. Jazakumullah khair. Yes. The next question.
I was gonna ask, so like, if I have like this decorative little silver piggy bank, and it's haram for me to have it, I think I also heard you say we can't like trade, so I can't bring it like to a pawn shop and sell it.
No. So if you have something that's impermissible, that is najis, there's a difference between obtaining something that's impermissible. So the question is, now I have a container made out of gold. Do I throw it in the trash? No. If you have beer or wine, you trash them. If you have pork, you trash that. Because it's not permissible and it is not muhtaram, it doesn't have value and it shouldn't be, right? Versus if you have something like of a value like this, you should sell it and not obtain it. Because I said like for trading, not for the purpose of trading, but for the purpose of obtaining a value, it's okay. Even if someone is saving like buying utensils online and gadgets and that has gold and stuff and saving them to make money, that's like you're not trading but to make value out of it, not for decorating, not for anything, not to have them in the house like we do, it will be fine. Yes.
So in India and Pakistan, they gift the silver utensils in marriage.
Yeah.
So it's not allowed for us to take it. And there's also, how it's a gift. It's a gift. And then also on weddings, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure it's not an Arab thing, but on weddings, they make sure that the groom drinks milk out of the yeah, silver one, silver
Yeah, I mean, like, we're talking about cultural practices now where people are gifted something or people use something. Where if someone gifts me, like, you know, anything that is, again, impermissible, that is not najis, that is not haram because it, like, you know, pork or anything that we'll talk about now, then again, take it and use the value, but do not use it for decoration, do not use it for anything, do not use it. The hadith talks about here, do not use it for trading, do not use it for water, wudu, do not use it for eating and drinking. لا تأكلوا ولا تشربوا. Do not drink, eat or drink in them. That's the usage. But take them and then figure out something else. Say jazakumullah khair, bring more and then we'll figure out. Yes. Any questions here? Yes? Yes.
1 second, brother had a question here. Yeah.
Yeah, please take.
Masjids that are decorated in gold, or like one that was even covered in gold, is that allowed? Is it like a different rule?
In the Shafi'i madhab, you're not allowed to pray in a room that has a ceiling decorated with gold and silver. You cannot even sit in that place. You should not. It's disliked. Yeah. So it is again, like, there's like some strict restrictions on that. Again, the question is about like, what if a masjid is decorated or a house is decorated? You should not. If it is covered, alhamdulillah.
I just want to say something here. It's an incredibly important question that you just asked, for the fact that if we are conducting, building, putting together places of worship, and there's not Islamic scholarship that accompanies that process, it is a bunch of investors and donors are well-wishing, alhamdulillah, and there are architects involved, alhamdulillah, and interior designers, alhamdulillah, but there's not someone who has the knowledge of the Sharia to do that. That's how these types of things will happen then, right? That's something that's really important for us to think about and to know. And now, maybe there's a difference of opinion between madhahib, perhaps. But if this is something which has a nas, the text is this clear from the Prophet ﷺ, as Sheikh has mentioned, when we talk about something which has karaha, which is makruh, tarakahu awla, yani leaving it is better for you, right? And it's not sinful if you do it, right? Even if it's makruh. But here there's a prohibition. It's a very different ruling between something being makruh, right, and something being prohibited. And that's what we're talking about when there's a nas from the Quran. Okay, we didn't find the Quran, but where do we find it? In the Sunnah. We found it in Hadith that it's prohibited. And then, so this is really important for us to actually think about these things as we develop our communities, as we develop our homes, and to break these cycles so we don't find these types of things that are in contradistinction, direct contradistinction, violation to our Sharia.
Yes, I think we'll take two more questions, one here and one there, and then we'll move on, because we have two more sections we want to cover. Yes.
Why gold is forbidden for girls?
Why?
It's also forbidden to drink and eat out of gold and silverware or silver cups. How come it is not haram if I'm wearing something just coated with gold?
So the question is like, if I'm wearing something that's coated with gold, is it halal or haram? We said it is impermissible to use anything that's gold coated that has significant amount. If you try to extract the gold from it, significant amount, then it is impermissible. So it still stays impermissible.
And correct me, Sheikh, if I'm wrong on this, but I understood this is that when they are melted, that when they are weighed, the amount of gold exceeds the amount of the other materials.
It doesn't have to exceed.
Not
but
even exceed?
Yeah, just like significant amount. But please don't go home and melt everything you have, burn everything to figure out that, inshallah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's
No, yeah.
what makes wearing gold from haram? I don't wear it. I don't like to wear it anyways. I just want to wear it.
So the questions of why, I think we'll keep the whys, inshallah, for personal discussions. If you want, we can inshallah we can have some talks about that. But again, we want to tackle as many rulings on that. The whys, there's so many whys that we need to really answer here, like about epistles and this and that. Yeah, but again, like the Iman, we'll always talk about this. There has to be a point where, why does the Prophet tell us to kiss the black stone? So if you enter into the realm of whys, there's like none ending. You have to get to the point where you sallim taslima. This is what we believe in. It's from Allah. It's a revelation. If I'm struggling, it's a revelation. Then I need to go and establish my iman. But once it's established, then we'll move on. That's But again, that doesn't mean that these rules don't have wisdom or hikmah. They do have wisdom. But sometimes it is just requires some analysis and some investigation, maybe some studies and this and that. Yes.
The cloth that covers the Kaaba, is that embroidered in gold?
I don't know what they do specifically for the Kaaba. We're talking about Kiswat al-Kaaba and other related things. But wallahu alam, it's not gold in a way that makes it impermissible. If it has colors or like coated in a way, that's what I think. But I don't think it is gold that makes it impermissible. Wallahu alam. No. Right. Moving on to the next section, inshallah. If we still have, again, like if you have any questions, please keep them, and inshallah we'll come back. Moving on to the section on page 35 about the najasat. Again, this is a very important section. We've been talking about pure and impure, so it is important to have your list. You need to have the list of what is impure. As the Sheikh said, listing the things that are pure is difficult. So what we'll do, just give the list of things that are impure, and then the rest, inshallah, is good to use. We have here, starting with the first one here, the Sheikh mentioned is al-khamr, wine. Wine in the Shafi'i madhab is impure. Wine in the Shafi'i school is impure. إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس. Rejs, it's impure. Okay, so that's in the Shafi'i madhab. The second thing here we have, when I say impure, that means if they come in your clothes, you need to wash them. If go back to the utensils, if someone is serving like a cup of juice for you that has been used before for wine, you cannot use it. That means if you go to a restaurant or what is it, shop for like juice or something to get it to order a drink, and if you are not certain about that this thing has been cleaned properly, then you cannot use it because it has najasa, and you're putting your drink after najasa. So that is as far as the wine. The next thing here that we know, familiar about number 2, dogs and pigs, they are impure. And we will learn that this is part of the najasa مغلظة. الحديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم said إذا ولغ الكلب في إناء أحدكم فليغسله 7 مرات ولهن بالتراب. If the dog licks the utensils, even your clothes, that's the Shafi'i position, you need to wash it 7 times. One of them was dust or anything equivalent to that will ensure that cleanliness has been conducted properly. So if you're using any kind of other chemical substance, it is also sufficient for that. The same thing applies to pigs. Not the 7 times for the pigs, but it is also impure. Any parts of the pigs, dogs, is considered to be impure. Number 3, the dead animal, carrion. And when we say dead animal here, we'll come to the point about the dhabiha. So establishing the principle here. So the animals let's classify the animals first into 2 categories. Animals, or 3 categories. We have animals that are eatable, animals that are not eatable, animals that are, so the one that we can eat, the one that are not impure but we cannot eat, right? And the one that are impure that you cannot. So the last one is pigs and dogs, done. Cats, for example, cannot eat them, but it is one category. Then the category, the eatable animals. So anything that is for the animals to be pure, it's flesh, bone, skin, the hair, anything that comes out of the animal. For it to be pure, it has to be an eatable animal, and it must go through مذكى ذكاة شرعية. Slaughtered, شرعي, slaughtering, means dhabiha. Meaning it has been slaughtered by someone, by Muslim or Ahl Kitab, and it has been slaughtered. So in that case, anything that comes from this animal is what is pure. Now we'll come to the category of what is impure. An example for that will be an animal that's eatable, but it wasn't مذكى ذكاة شرعية. It wasn't slaughtered. Or it was slaughtered by Majusi, like atheists, or someone who's not Muslim or people of the book. In that case, everything except the skin, we'll talk about that, is impure. The bone, the qarn, the horns, everything is impure. The other category, the last category, is something that died even from whatever, from our eatable or not, something that's dead. It remains what? It remains impure. So when we talk about dead carrion animals, we're talking about something that wasn't slaughtered. Whether it's eatable or not, it remains in that case. It remains impure. We'll come to the point about what if an animal that is eatable, like a cow or a sheep, that died. Can we make any use of it? Because in that case, you said everything in it is impure. Yes, you can use the skin after it has been tainted, and we'll talk about that. How about the cat? There is no, alhamdulillah, Trump would be happy that we talk about the cat and say it's not eatable in Islam, cannot eat them. Whether you do the cat shar'iyya or not, it remains in that category. Same thing applies to dogs. So that is for the animals. Number 4, dam al-masfuh, flowing blood, is also considered to be najis. Number 5 is urine, feces of the animals and the human, with the exception of so the feces of the animals that are not eatable, like lions, dogs, cats, donkeys, is considered to be impure. the feces of the animals that are eatable, especially the one that we like, if you have cows, you have camels, you have, sheep, is okay, is not impure. That is a Shafi'i position. Again, all the hadiths are mentioned here, like about why the urine and the feces of the human and these animals are impure. Also in this category, we need to remember al-hayd wa nifas, the menstruation blood is also impure. Number 6, any part of an animal that is separated from this animal is considered to be mayt. So the hadith says, whatever ma quti'a min bahimatin fahuwa mayta. If any part that's separated from an animal is considered to be what? Dead. So you cannot, if you're a good hunter and mashallah you're chasing a good deer and you're able to only get one leg from the deer. You didn't get everything, you just got one leg. So can you take this one leg and eat it? No, you can't, because it is a part of an animal that was not slaughtered shar'an. The human is always pure, regardless. So whether living, dead, or la qaddar, any part of our body is separated, that part is also considered to be what? Pure, and it has its own rulings. The last thing, number 7, the milk of the animals whose flesh is not eating, such as donkeys and likewise, are considered to be what? Are considered to be najis. So inshallah, the Shaykh will go over the 2 more categories about the najasa, and then we'll take questions. I know you have a lot of questions. So we have the najasa al-hukmiyya wal-ayniyya. Shaykh, if you can over that. And also there is one section at the end here about some of the excused najasat. We'll learn about the najasat, the substances that are impure. You also need to learn about what is excused from these things. So inshallah we'll cover that, and then we'll open for Q&A.
We'll go quickly over this section here. So as Sheikh was, we'll go quickly over this section here. Sheikh was talking about, and we talked about it, just 2 terms. So really, ayniyya and hukmiyya. So the first one, ayniyya, obviously from your eyes, you can see it. It's discernible, right? It has a smell. It has an odor or something like that. The second really is the hukmiyya, which is what Junaid mentioned here. That is something which it's indiscernible. It's dried out. There's no trace left. So let's think about now that in 2 categories. You have 2 categories of najasa that you have to deal with. One which you can see, smell. It's got a mass or something like that. That's a type. And another type is I know it happened, right? I know that there was urine that dropped here or something like that. I just don't know. It's not. I can no longer see it or smell it or like this. That still remains as the hukum of it being najis. Okay. So that's slide 11. We'll go to slide 12 now. The Shafi'i school kind of categorizes najasa into 3 categories here. The first one mentioned, I'll go from the right to the left. Sorry, on my screen from the left to the right. Mughallaba. So this is what Sheikh talked about, pigs and dogs. And here, mentioned with a dog, how to remove it, removing it 7 times, ahadahunna biturab, and that one of those times, the first washing is with a type of soil. It's very interesting because there was a PhD that was done on the lu'ab, the saliva of a dog, as to why soil was used, and it said that the tongue of the dog carries a certain type of bacteria. That bacteria was not removed simply from having water, but it was actually the elements that were inside of the soil removed that bacteria from that. So again, this is that interesting place where it's like we're not affirming that through the science. We're affirming it because our Prophet ﷺ, who receives revelation from the creator of the heavens and the earth and all that is between, has told us. And if science then affirms it afterwards, alhamdulillah, that's the point of iman. And if it doesn't, alhamdulillah, it's the point of iman. So here, this is the first ruling, okay? Now, Sheikh talked about that, the dog and the pig and this, that, and he talked about that the hair, Sheikh will get into this level, the hair in and of itself is not najis if it is dry, because it's a hukum. It says, jaf ala jaf, tahar bila khilaf. Something which is dry on something which is dry is pure, remains pure, right, without a difference of opinion. Okay? Without difference of opinion. However, if that dog hair gets wet, now it's a problem. Because now it's najis. The only other exception you have for that as well is that if there is a follicle, which is hard to discern, but if there's a follicle of flesh that is on the end of that hair, that in and of itself that's a hard state to determine. And mostly the assumption would be that it's not, right? Let me just finish this section. Okay, so we're talking about now the pig and the dog. So the dry dog, in and of itself, that does not lick you, right? If it comes in contact with you, that's not najis. Okay, that's not najis. If it is wet and comes in contact with you, that is najis. However, a pig, whether it's dry, whether it's wet, in and of itself, contact with the pig constitutes it is najis. Okay, so that's that one category now. That's what we call heavy. It takes 7 washings. One of those washings has to be with soil to remove the najasa from the place of contact. Number 2 is called mukhaffaf. Mukhaffaf is a unique category that is a breastfed boy before the age of 2, cannot have eaten any solid foods. If that boy's urine comes onto your clothing, then that urine does not have to be washed off to the point of washing where there is nothing of it that remains, but rather the sprinkling of that with water is sufficient. Okay, and we'll talk about the removal of the next category, which differentiates between these two. The proof here is that the Prophet ﷺ, I'm just going to paraphrase for the interest of time, that the Prophet ﷺ had a young boy that was brought to him. He had not eaten any solid food. He was only breastfed. He urinated on the Prophet ﷺ when he was holding him. The Prophet ﷺ took water and just sprinkled it on it, right? He sprinkled it on it. Now the sprinkling is supposed to be to the point where the amount of water overtakes the amount of urine. The amount of water overtakes the amount of urine, okay? And it doesn't matter how many times one does it, but just to sprinkle on that, okay? That's mukhaffaf. And the third one is mutawassit. And mutawassit is the one that normally we find. That's the common one that we find. So you come in contact with urine, with blood, with feces, with pus, with vomit, with these types of things. That has to be removed. So say, it's on an area on your garment. You put this here. You isolate that garment, it's there. You have to wash that thing with water running over it, okay? Running over it and running off of it until the smell, the taste, and the color are removed from that garment or floor or carpet or whatever that thing is. So those are 3 categories that we're talking about here when we talk about heavy, when the Shafi'i school talks about heavy, light, and medium, right? Najasat or najas states. That's how we remove return it to a state of purity from a state of impurity. Okay. I'm just going to go quickly on this, and then we'll open up for questions. Sister had a question here. Sheikh talked about dabagh, right, or dibagh, which is tanning. So Sheikh talked about when a edible animal, which is not slaughtered shar'an, that its flesh is permissible. It's only permissible in the state after it being tanned. It's only permissible in the state after it being tanned. Okay, so that's why we can get a sheepskin from IKEA that you have inside of your house. Alhamdulillah, it's tahir, right? Because it's undergone a tanning process. What's the tanning process? The tanning process is the tanning process is to remove any moisture from that animal, removing aspects of its flesh or anything else that would cause rot or decomposition, which would in turn cause the animal, would cause the breakdown of that thing that you're using. But more importantly, that because there is still moisture and dung and these types of things that would be on it, even if it dries, any contact with liquid that would come into it would make it najis immediately. Okay? Because you'd be coming into contact with its flesh and with its blood, which it was not slaughtered, which Sheikh talked about before, okay? Here, Sheikh was saying, and this what they talk about here, is that even when it is tanned, it has to be washed. You can't just tan it, let it dry, and then use it. It has to be washed because of the tanning agents that are used. Now, traditionally, tanning is done with a brain. It's called brain tanning. That's the lye that is inside of that, or a soap or something like that. That aspect is what's being removed in the second wash, or the washing after it has been completely tanned. There are other agents that you use now, but they're chemically based. Whether it remains najis or doesn't remain najis, I'm not going to get into that conversation right now. Just suffice to say that ensuring that it has been washed in a post-tanning process. Okay, so that's how we get around it. Now, certain skin cannot be made tahir or even in the state of tanning, which is pig skin. So that's why it's incredibly important that when we have leather garments, shoes, belts, purses, wallets, you have to ensure it's not pig skin. It's impermissible to wear. It's impermissible to wear, and contact with that thing constitutes najasa. Okay? There's something, I don't know if you know how to look for it, but the hair follicles on a pig, they actually make a triangle. So when you look at the leather, when you open it up, you'll see a triangulation, a triangled pattern of one follicle and then two follicles. It'll follow that pattern, one, then two, one, then two, one, then two. That's how you can determine whether or not you have pig skin or not. Or you can call the manufacturer and ask them if it is pig skin or not. Also, we have to be careful of boar's head brushes, right? So boars, their skin, right? Their hair. You'll find that a lot of brushes are made from that as well too. So just being cognizant and careful of these things. And then excuse najas here. Here, tiny, not discernible splashes of urine and blood, etc. So it's called ma'fu'an. So it's something which is, normally, like with a quick look at it, it wouldn't be discernible that it is there. Small amounts of blood plus pus, which is unintentional, meaning that you didn't cause that thing to happen. You didn't pick a scab and cause the blood to come out. That's what's meaning by unintentional. Wounds or fluids within normal spread, meaning that it's not jara, it's not like drip, like running out of that space. If it's contained within the area of where the wound is, it remains okay in that. Dung, again, these are things that we may not come in contact with, but just we can. Dung and crushed seeds, all right? Milk, unless it changes. So obviously, because the cow, you're dealing with dung in the area of the milking and other things such as that. If it is a small amount, it's ma'fu'an. If the dung is crushed into a seed, it's ma'fu'an. Fish, bird droppings in the masjid, right, and haram, etc. If there is no change, okay, meaning that it just remains kind of as that is, which is really interesting because I remember in Masjid Nawawi there was a bird that, dropped droppings like right in front where I was praying, and alhamdulillah, so you get to apply that hukum in real life. A butcher, so people that have a trade, so for example their job, so a butcher, he can't get all of the blood off of him, for example, and salat time is coming in. That's ma'fu'an for him, okay, in that, and also not only on his body but also on clothing as well too. And again, child's mouth, so vomit, contact only with breastfeeding here, street mud splashes and small dead insects, no flowing blood. Talked about fleas and flies really are the insects that are made an example of in terms of that. So if you don't intentionally, if you don't intentionally kill the fly or the flea and have its blood come out, then it's ma'fu'an. But if there's intentionality behind it, that's not the case. You can correct me on that if it's a different understanding. And then also the ruling is that if there is mud and things that splash on you, and even if there is najasa that's in the area, if you cannot determine that there was najasa that was with that, you don't assume that there was najasa. The assumption is it was not, and you continue on. And that comes from a story of Umar radiallahu anhu about water that was poured off of a rooftop or something like this, and he just said, "Don't ask," and the assumption was that it was fine, and they kept it moving, if you will. So Allah knows best, but these are some of the what's called what is ma'fu an, okay, what is excused in this.
So inshallah, we'll go over a few points and then inshallah we'll take the questions. We said the human is always pure, right? Believer or disbeliever, the human, Allah said, لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam. That's the default rule. In Al-Madhab Shafi'i, al-qay, vomiting is impure. Vomiting is impure. As the Sheikh explained, there are some type of najasat. It doesn't mean that everything that's impure, you cannot use it. There are some impure substances that you can use. And an example for that is the skin of an animal that is eatable, but it wasn't slaughtered. So we can purify the skin. So that's impure, but we can use it after purification. Another thing is that if people use the fertilization substance from like the dung of the animals, that's also impure stuff that we can use. So you can't say every impure is impermissible to use. You can at a certain point use them, and just a few examples. And the Sheikh highlighted that things like dogs and pigs, there's nothing about them that you can make. There's nothing you can make, nothing you can do to make them pure. It always stays in that state of impurity. Yeah, so these are just a few things to highlight. Inshallah, we'll open for Q&A, inshallah. Yes.
Two quick questions. One, let's say I'm out at a park and my daughter's nose bleeds, and it gets on my shirt, and I don't have water to access, like, to do the purification. Does it mean that I can't pray? Like, do I pray when I can go home, or what do I do?
So the question is about the blood.
Like nosebleed.
Yes, it's still is not, again, we're talking about flowing blood. We're talking about significant amount of blood that we take it to the level of something being najis. But if it's small amount that comes in your clothes, we're talking about flowing in a way that has like significance amount. That's the thing. So it's mentioned here, like if the butchers, for example, if they have like some like splashes of blood on them, they can actually pray with this clothes. So it is not, you cannot say that blood is impure, even like a few drops of it. That's not the case. Most of it will be excused. Very rare cases where you have a significant amount that makes it impure that you cannot pray. So in that case, you can pray.
Okay, and if water was accessible, do I have to wash out the blood, or do I just?
Again, if can we always go to the safer position and be in the safe side? Yes. If you can wash it, remove the traces of the blood, that's what you should do. But again, that doesn't apply to the blood of menstruation. That's a different rule. So the blood of menstruation is regardless of the amount, it is impure and it has to be cleaned in a way. Yes. The second question.
The other question is that third, I don't know what it was called, the third category.
Mutawassit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That one,
yeah.
when we have, wash until removed, is there a certain, do we say anything particular? Is there a certain number? How do we wash it off? Is there anything particular that I have to say or do?
No.
Wash off
Yeah. So the question is about like again, like not everyone classifies najasa in this way. So sometimes scholars classify them into mughallaza, mukhaffafa, and mutawassit. The way it is presented here and why is to kind of give you the foundation. So the default is that everything is mutawassit, in which you don't need to do anything other than removing the traces of the impurity, and that's it. You don't say anything, you don't need to say, make the intention, Bismillah, I have the intention of washing the mutawassit najasa or the heavy najasa. You don't need to worry about that, just wash it until you remove the traces and you feel, by urf, by personal judgment, it is clean. The difference is, the Sheikh mentioned the two examples, the dog there is regardless, it has to be the 7 times. What if one time makes it possible? No, you still need to do it 7 times because that is the rule. Again, there are other opinions, but the Shafi'i position sticks to that 7 times, regardless of how good one time washing could do the job, you still need to do it 7 times. And then the mukhaffafa, we talked about them. Jazakumullah khair. So third question from you. And then.
Does the 7 times mean like it has to be dry in between? Because if you do like a tap, can you just splash it 7 times?
It doesn't have to be dried, wallahu alam. Does this for the 7th time, does this have to be dried and cleaned and dried and cleaned? It doesn't have to be, wallahu alam, dried. Yes.
So how do you, like, if you have a tap, you just turn on the tap, you're washing it, right,
How would you wash something traditionally 7 times? Like what we usually do, like to wash 7 times? Wash, new water. He doesn't know, please. You know, obviously he didn't do any washing at home.
Outed him.
Okay. Bismillah. Yes.
Brother, sister has a question, and brother in the back.
Yeah. So we'll take a question and come back.
So let's say you have like a paper cut and you're bleeding or a nose bleeding or something like this. Is it enough to just clean it or do you have to make remove? Now that you've removed that najasa.
To the level of jarrah,
Yeah.
it breaks in the Shafi'i.
What-
I can't remember.
what is it?
The level of blood breaks the in the Shafi'i school.
It doesn't know.
Does not. So there's in the Shafi'i school, the flowing of the blood does not break the wudu. Yeah. So if you have a cut, you have a nosebleed or something like that, it does not break. Yeah.
As long as it stays like the insignificant amount. Again, does
Yeah.
blood breaks wudu that I have to redo my wudu unless it's a significant amount. The same thing for the pus. If it's significant amount, then it does. Otherwise, it doesn't. And this is based on Hadith Umar when he was stabbed and he continued his salah. That's based on that narration. Yes. Ahmed?
Not next.
Both the evidence you mentioned were talking about believers only. Does that mean non-believer human corpses are not pure?
Okay, speak louder so I didn't get the question.
The evidence you provided and that are given for human corpses being pure specify believers. Does that mean the corpses of non-believers are not pure?
No. Talking about like the deceased body, like we said for the Allah says, because there is an ayah in the Quran that said إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ, that disbelievers are najis. But here najasa is najasa hukmi. It's najasa i'tiqadi. Sorry, i'tiqadi. It's like the filthiness of the heart. That's the spiritual illnesses. That's what we're talking about. But as the body, the rule, the principle, we have honored the children of Adam. Karramna bani Adam. So the default rule that they're always pure. Yes.
I think you did mention this, I just might have missed it. So, like, if I'm like walking, for example, and then like a neighbor's dog like brushes against my leg and the dog's like dry, is my pants transition now or not?
So a dog that comes and bothers me as I'm walking, and you know, if the dog is dry and you didn't see any traces in your clothes, then you're good. You don't need, there's no harm there. But if it has a sweat, which most cases it is, if it is wet, then that wetness is najasa and you need to clean it.
What if like some fur clings on my hands?
What if what?
Fur, like dog fur.
What if it's hair? The hair.
Yeah,
of the dog?
I again, the hair needs to be removed at least. It needs to be removed. Yes. Yes.
You said something about when you're this like that in terms of when you're at a restaurant, for instance,
Yeah.
and you don't know what's been served beforehand. I thought there was something about if you, let's say a pizza, you make a pizza and the knife is cut maybe with something else before and you want a vegetarian pizza. Is that permissible or do you ask for a different knife, which I usually do anyway?
Yeah. So a very good question here that about I don't know, like the question of I don't know, like what if I don't know, right? So what is the default? I'll highlight one point that I skipped and then I'll come back to your question. What is the default for an animal? The default is that it is slaughtered or not slaughtered. مذكى or غير مذكى. What do you think? What is the default? Not slaughtered. Because like for it to be like مذكى ذكاة شرعية slaughtered but in a shari'i way, which is someone that says Bismillah or Ahl Kitab or Muslim, that is the exception. That's something that an extra effort that's put there. So the default it is what? It is غير مذكى. So we go with that. If I'm not sure, then we go with that. Unless there is some kind of certainty that's built that now it is مذكر ذكاة شرعية. So that's one. And again, ذكاة شرعية here means ذبيحة شرعية, doesn't necessarily mean that a Muslim did it. Could again be Ahl Kitab, and that's why in the fatwa in the US that most of the slaughterhouses for the chicken, for example, they have like the machine cut, and then people who are working there, majority of them are Christian, like, or Jewish, so that's the majority, as this is majority, a Christian majority country, so we say this is the default. Versus if you are in India, where the default is like Hinduism or other, like, non-Ahl Kitab, then the default is no, it has to be that way. Going back now to your question about in a restaurant, I'm not sure, like whether they cleaned it or not. So you have to use your best judgment, because the rule here is this: if you're eating a pizza and that has been cooked in a tray that has been used for pork, if you're eating a steak, that has been cooked in a pan that, was used for pork, there's some kind of najasa that must have been cleaned and removed first. If it wasn't removed, then that's when we say that the food that you're eating has some kind of like najasa in it. So you have to make your best judgment, and we cannot call certain restaurants, say this restaurants are the halal one and the haram one. We'll stay away from that. Yes. Follow-up question.
Just continuing that.
Yeah.
So when you say, I was going to ask you that question, but just a real quick question about that. From my understanding of what I've studied in the past, is that the Trinity is shirk, which then means that they're not practicing one
I'll request that you skip that, because we'll finish like in an hour. So the question is about what defines Ahl Kitab or not. I think that's a good discussion to have, but I think that's it's not fiqh, it's aqidah now. So let's stay in the aqidah track. Yes. Guys, have a question here? Yes. Junaid, and then come back.
It's kind of like a dishwasher.
Sure. Say it again.
A dishwasher?
Is it halal to use a dishwasher?
Is it 7 times? Okay, no, you said like if you go to a restaurant,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So he's saying that
You can use it.
if I understand the question, you're saying that if utensils or plates or something that are run through a dishwasher and there's 7 cycles in it, does that remove the najasa from the item? So whether there's 7 cycles or not would be based on Westinghouse or whatever the brand is, but it would be missing the component of one of them has to be with dirt to uphold that ruling of it. But it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question.
I think that
But one of them-
is a waste of the water. 7 seconds.
No, we're talking about the machine itself. Like when you turn on your thing, it's not just washing it once. Like your machine is washing and then rinsing and then washing and rinsing. Maybe that completes 7 cycles, if that's what I'm understanding you're saying. Correct, right?
Every place, like in America, serves pork, right? Like, I mean, there's, can't really find a place that does it.
Yeah, but again, like here, we're not talking. Why are we worried about the restaurant? Because was it licked by a dog? Because the strict rule here about 7 times. Some scholars go with the opinion that it is limited to the leg of the dog. If so, yeah, even for pigs, yeah. But for everything else, the 1 time could be sufficient. So the 1 time, if you're eating in a plate that has been used for serving pork, the 1 time washing for this is sufficient. Because the najasa mughallada here, the heavy kind of najasa, we're talking about the living dog coming in contact with someone, and that's why it is again limited to that. Based in a lot of most of the opinions that we encounter now. Yeah.
Afroz?
So the most important distinguish here, Sheikh, is that the pork in the situation is dead.
Yeah.
That's why washing it once is enough.
Yeah.
But if it was like a live pig or dog,
The najasa is still.
okay.
Yes, yes. Jazakumullah khair. So take two questions, one from here, one from there, inshallah. We'll conclude. At the beginning of next class, we'll have more questions, inshallah. Yes. Yes.
So, I just want to make sure I understand.
Is it about the silver thing?
It's about the dog. So, the dog licking, you have to touch the dirt and then wash 7 times.
Yes.
Does that break the wudu, or is that enough? Or then do you have to do wudu after that?
It does not break wudu. So talking about the najasa here, it does not break your wudu because you did not do anything that nullified your wudu, such as using the bathroom and so on. So in that case, you need to take care of that najasa on your clothes, on your skin, and then continue.
The easiest way, I think, to not confuse this is that coming in contact with najasa does not break your wudu. Coming in contact with najasa does not break your wudu. So whether it was the runny nose, the question that was asked about the bloody nose, or does that break wudu, or coming in contact with these types of things. So what we're thinking about here now, because we're going to get into a category of, right, the things that break your wudu, right? So coming in contact with najasa is not one of them. Okay, that's going to be the easiest way to frame that, because rather than asking each one thing, right? If they vomit on me and it hits me in the eye, and like, what happens with that? Like, that's khalas, like, that's the kind of the premise that you operate on. Coming in contact with najasa does not break your wudu. We have to remove the najasa. That's the section that we're talking about right now, right? How do you make something that was pure, that came into contact, made it impure? How do I turn it back into being pure? That's what we're talking about right now.
Last question.
It's in regards to the dog. Years back home, we had a dog, a guard dog, with a yard. And I hated that dog just because every time I would go next to him, I have to change my clothes, I have to do again, and so on. So I had to ask the sheikh of the neighborhood. And he said, all you have to do, rinse it up, do your wudu if you're gonna pray, and pray.
Yeah.
Even including the clothes.
Yeah.
He said, you don't have to remove the clothes, you don't have to wash them 7 times.
Yeah.
You just rinse a little water and go on.
Yeah.
Is it the difference in between madhab, or is he mistaken?
So the question is, again, what if I do it only one time? He was advised by one of the mashayikh to do that. As I said, like, there are different opinions about this. Do you need to do it 7 times in all cases or not? Is the 7 times limited to licking? Does it extend to them living there? There's so many different rulings about that. So yes, if you go with the rule that says I'll wash it only one time, I'll throw it in the washing machine, dishwasher, and it's taken care of. According to many of the scholars, and I think it's one of the strongest opinion nowadays, based on the technology that we have, the 7 times that cycles that the dishwashers have, it is actually sufficient, and you're not mistaken.
No,
You're not-
he was still with the 7 times,
Yeah.
but only in parts and vessels.
Yeah.
But as far as my clothes or my skin, as I'm playing with the dog, or the dog comes up to me and he licks me, or his saliva drops, he said, all you have to do is just pass some water on it.
The skin is 1 time is sufficient. The skin is 1 time is sufficient. So I'll ask my question, and then I will dismiss you. The question. So we said blood is impermissible. Is there one type of blood that we can eat? Because the Prophet ﷺ said there are 2 dead animals we can eat, and there are 2 bloods that we can eat. So, sorry? Yes, or the liver and the spleen. So the 2 things that we can eat, liver and the spleen. Of course, you cook them unless you want to eat them not cooked. It's up to you. And then the 2 dead animals is that the fish and the locusts. So both of them are permissible, even if
Locust.
Yeah. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك ان شاء الله next week we'll continue ان شاء الله السلام عليكم.
And I just putting this out there right now, inviting you all to the Maliki madhab, and you don't have to worry about dogs at all.
And don't follow that, please. الكبد والطحال الكبد liver والطحال والسمك والجراد. Again, like, yeah, no, it's like the rule that we go in is straightforward. That they lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They were there at the time of the Prophet, and in the Quran they were called mushrikeen and Ahl Kitab and Kuffar. So the fact that the rulings that we're talking about here were established actually at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and they were mushrikeen at that time.